Take a look at a map of Europe. See those straight roads slicing across Britain, and the ports thriving in places that make no geographic sense. Those cities sitting on dry hills with fountains still flowing. That isn't natural geography, it's Roman engineering. In Spain's Rio Tinto, miners unearthed a massive wooden wheel buried in the dirt. What they uncovered wasn't just a wheel, it was a machine that turned geography into gold, literally. It was a Roman water wheel, pulling water from deep mines and supercharging gold and silver extraction. Imagine a Roman miner knee-deep in mud, watching this wheel turn, every rotation fueling armies and cities he'd never see. And while miners marveled at spinning wheels, engineers were facing an even bigger challenge: how to bring down entire mountains. Romans figured out how to bring down whole mountains. Using a process called ruinomontium, they unleashed massive water pressure to weaken, then collapse, sections of a mountain. Workers faced being crushed by falling rocks or swept away by flooding as part of the job. Today, we can still see examples of this throughout Europe today. Once the mountains were conquered, the question became, where could you even build a road across an empire this vast? Unlike today's pothole-filled streets, Rome built more than 186,000 miles of Roman roads so sturdy that many of them are still around. Made from hard volcanic rock and granite, they connected a sprawling empire. The roads moved people and products across Europe, Asia, and North Africa, and unintentionally spread non-native species, changing local ecosystems for good. Roads made travel possible, but surviving the winter was another matter entirely. If you got through the winter without frostbite, thank the Romans. They came up with a heating system called hypocaust heating, sending warm air through floors and walls. It kept everything from private homes to public baths warm, and honestly, without it, building big crowded cities in colder climates would have been a lot harder. Warm floors were one thing, but how do you make sure news and orders move as fast as your armies? Conquering land is one thing, holding it is another. To keep his regions connected, and, taxes flowing, Augustus created the cursus publicus, Rome's imperial postal system. A messenger could cover around 50 miles per day, but with a relay of horses, messages could travel almost 170 miles each day. Messages could fly across the empire, but the roads themselves had to survive centuries of use and disasters. Self-healing concrete, known as opus cementitium, is actually the reason so many Roman structures and roads are still standing today. They mixed lime with volcanic ash, pozzolana, water, and a few other materials to create this remarkably durable building material. The lime made it self-healing, so cracks would seal themselves over decades, which is honestly a feat that modern engineers still marvel at. And, one of these systems is still quietly powering a modern city today. But hey, before we get to that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was this channel. Now, while engineers were busy keeping buildings standing, farmers were fighting a different kind of battle: the soil itself. The aerodrome was an iron-tipped plow that really changed the game for soil cultivation. Romans used it to farm more land, more efficiently, and with less labor than ever before. This allowed the Roman population, and honestly, the populations of every civilization that used the same technology later, to thrive. Fertile fields fed people, but of course, someone had to turn all that grain into bread for the masses. In Barbegal, France, archaeologists discovered a Roman complex of 16 water wheels, possibly the world's first mega-factory. At its peak, it ground enough flour to feed 27,000 people every single day. This wasn't just some village mill, it was an ancient industrial complex, feeding an entire city. But, where does all the water come from to keep these bustling cities going? Not only did the Romans revolutionize city water delivery, they did it using nothing but gravity, sloping channels that carried water across what seemed like impossible terrain. Roman citizens were able to live in cities that really shouldn't exist, perched on dry hills, with water flowing from miles away into fountains, baths, and cisterns. The Aqua Virgo still flows today, feeding Rome and even the Trevi Fountain, serving as a reminder of how daring engineering reshaped the map. If water could flow uphill, Romans started to wonder what else they could move, maybe even whole lakes. 21. Lake drainage. Romans drained lakes on a massive scale. In the 1st century AD, they lowered Fucine Lake to stop flooding and get rid of the malaria-spreading mosquitoes that lived there. They did it by building a long tunnel with a slight downward slope to drain the water. A few centuries earlier, they drained Lake Albano, all because an oracle said they'd never win in battle, as long as the water stayed. Slightly less practical, still impressive. With floods controlled, cities could grow taller, literally. 20. Apartments. That's right, Romans invented apartments, or insulae. The ground floor had shops, and people lived above them. But back then, higher floors weren't luxury penthouses. They were for the poorer residents, because the whole climbing stairs thing was a pain. Still, this high-density housing revolutionized urban construction, letting cities grow upward and house millions. Stacking people in buildings is one way to organize a city. Stacking knowledge is another. 19. The Codex Scrolls might have looked impressive, but they were long, unwieldy, and hard to share across the Roman Empire. So Romans came up with an early version of the Codex, stacking pages of papyrus to make a primitive notebook. Knowledge spread faster than ever, letting distant territories receive blueprints, scientific discoveries, and vital information, and changing the development of the Roman world forever. The Codex helped spread ideas, but how do you move water miles across a city without modern tools? 18. Chorobates. Almost none of Rome's engineering feats, especially aqueducts, would have been possible without the chorobate. It was a 20-foot, 6-meter table with plumb lines and a water level that allowed surveyors to measure precise gradients so water flowed smoothly across miles. One wrong gradient, and Rome doesn't get water. No water, no city. Surveyors ensured water flowed. Soldiers ensured cities survived. 17. Gladius sword. This short, double-edged sword let soldiers remain in tight formations and deal deadly thrusts with precision. Romans slashed their way to battlefield supremacy with the gladius sword, allowing them to conquer a huge swathe of Eurasia and change the course of history. Weapons defended the empire, but sanitation defended lives. 16. Cloaca Maxima. A great development for those who don't love dying of flooding or cholera, and an innovation that keeps our city streets and grounds relatively clean to this day. Rome is surrounded by hills. The Cloaca Maxima drained the rainwater and wastewater that frequently swamped the city, making it livable. It still drains the Forum today. Drainage kept streets clean, but keeping citizens informed was a challenge of a different sort. 15. Daily news and First State propaganda network. Before cable news came, the daily acts, Acta Diurna. Romans published daily updates that mixed military victories, political decrees, and spin, almost like today's media. The daily acts were crucial for keeping military campaigns going with majority citizen support. If words could shape minds, materials shaped the empire itself. 14. Opus Signum. Romans revolutionized waterproofing materials to make some of the most durable structures on Earth. Opus Signum was made of cement and crushed terracotta, and it kept aqueducts operating by making sure water didn't leak all over the place. This helped lead to the invention of plumbing. Concrete held water in place, but the land had to yield crops to feed the people. 13. Coulter Romans attached tools called coulters to their plows, revolutionizing agriculture in northern Europe. When the empire expanded north, they realized Mediterranean plows couldn't handle the heavy, sticky soils of the region. The coulter, a vertical blade mounted in front of the plow, cut deep into turf, roots, and thick soil. Farmers in Gaul could marvel as the coulter sliced through roots and tough soil, turning impossible fields into fertile ground. But when you have an empire, you have enemies. 12. The Corvus. The Corvus, a boarding bridge with a spike, helped Rome turn the tide against Carthage. Rome hadn't mastered naval warfare yet while Carthage ruled the seas. Roman sailors leapt onto enemy decks using the Corvus, turning sea battles into hand-to-hand fights. Up close, Rome had the advantage. They won the Punic Wars and changed history. How do you navigate an empire so vast? 11. The original GPS. There's little point in a huge road network if you don't know how far every place is from another. That's why milestones lined the roads from Rome and the Millennium Arium. The Golden Milestone, so travelers always knew how far they were from the city. This made it possible to map the entire Roman road network with precision. Knowing the way is one thing, but sometimes you have to build your own harbor to make the journey possible. 10. Artificial ports. Instead of relying mostly on natural harbors, Rome went ahead and constructed artificial deep-water ports wherever they felt like it. This changed where trade and shipping could happen. In addition to the imperial port of Portus, ports like Corinth's Lycaon sprang up along exposed coastlines, thanks to Rome's engineering and dredging know-how. Ports altered coastlines, cofferdams shaped rivers. 9. Cofferdams. How did Romans build massive bridges and flowing rivers? It's not like they had scuba divers. They used cofferdams, watertight enclosures and riverbeds that could be pumped dry. A single construction team could temporarily hold back a river, something most people couldn't imagine. Even today, modern versions of cofferdams are used to construct bridges all over the world. Water could be controlled, but the sun was another resource waiting to be harnessed. 8. Solar power. Turns out the Romans were all about green energy. They used passive solar architecture featuring huge glass windows to heat public buildings and bathhouses. They also concentrated solar power to light torches. It became so important that by the 6th century AD, Roman legislators guaranteed sun rights for their citizens. Ever seen a viaduct and think, how? 7. Arches. Romans were the first to understand how useful arches could be in engineering. By distributing weight down and out, arches let them, and every civilization after, build massive structures like the Colosseum. A single keystone could hold up a bridge or aqueduct, allowing Romans to build larger, taller, and stronger than ever before. Structures rise, but without maps, you might never find them. 6. Itineraria. Rome developed the world's first travel guides called itineraria, making Romans first tourists in the world. These guides mapped routes, stops, distances, and other essentials for travelers and traders. The most famous is the Tabula Peutingeriana survives thanks to a 13th century copy, even though the original is lost. Cartography wasn't just practical, it reshaped how Romans imagined the world. Charts let people navigate the land, and Romans also learned to farm the sea. 5. Advanced aquaculture. Aquaculture let Romans keep seawater fish and oysters in shallow lagoons so they could harvest them whenever they wanted. Wealthier homes even had vivaria, basically the ancient version of a restaurant lobster tank. A wealthy Roman might pluck a fish from a private tank for dinner, the original choose-your-own-meal experience. Today, aquaculture is the fastest-growing food sector and is practiced almost everywhere. Seafood is one thing, Rome still needed forests for fuel, ships, and buildings. 4. Deforestation. Rome's inventions and projects required a massive amount of timber for fuel, construction, and new farmland. Entire forests across Europe were cut down to meet the need. Imagine entire landscapes stripped of trees while Rome's ships, homes, and fortifications rose from the wood. Today, much of the former Roman Empire has very few virgin forests left, and much of that loss traces back to Roman activity. And all those trees had to go somewhere. 3. Portus Shipyard. Romans turned shipbuilding into a massive industry, as the ruins at Portus show. Shipwrights studied enemy vessels, then built stronger, faster ships that dominated the Mediterranean. This created Mare Nostrum, our sea, turning the Mediterranean into a united trading bloc rather than a barrier. Ships sailed, battles raged, and medics were the quiet difference between victory and defeat. 2. Army medics. Ancient Rome was the first civilization to embed a team of field doctors and medics in its armies, changing the dynamics of global warfare. Historians credit army medics with fewer battlefield losses for Rome, healthier soldiers, and, most importantly, improved morale. It allowed Rome to conduct long-term, large-scale campaigns to conquer the known world, and an empire needed to run on rules, and sometimes they weren't fair. 1. Roman legal system. 2,000 years later, Europe's roads and cities still follow Roman lines. Not only that, but the Roman Republic inspired modern democracies and invented the loopholes that let empires get away with mass slavery for centuries. Direct democracy was too messy for a sprawling empire, so citizens elected representatives to make the tough decisions. You can thank Rome for giving over 150 countries the blueprint for democratic government. One thing is clear, Rome didn't just conquer territory. It rerouted rivers, leveled mountains, built cities where none should exist. The empire may have collapsed, but the geography it engineered never did. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on Map Secrets World.